Hey everybody, welcome to Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. My name is Reed with Best Made Videos. We are a wedding videography company based out of West Seattle, Washington, and I am up here today in Linwood, Washington at the home of Holly Goodman of Sablewood Paper Company. Holly, thank you so much for allowing me to come visit you in your home office. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you guys do?
Thanks, Reed. Thanks for having me. I'm Holly. I'm the owner, designer, creative force behind Sablewood Paper Company. We are a boutique invitation and calligraphy studio. I do custom designs for my clients who really enjoy personalizing their wedding. Everything from invitations to signage to day of pieces, anything that you can really dream of that you can put on paper.
And we were talking just a little bit off mic about how, kind of in recent years that really the personalization has really come on strong in terms of couples, with the pieces for their wedding. Do you want to talk about maybe kind of the trend that you've seen or how that's grown?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was just saying to Reed when I got married and when the time that we got married, there wasn't any personalization in weddings, really. It was more about focus on the colors and the flowers and, what does your dress look like and your hair and things like that. But we've seen a shift in the last couple of years that couples really want to involve their pets in their wedding days. We have a lot of pets, as ring bearers walking down the aisle. I do a lot of pet illustrations for my clients for their signature drinks that they name after their pets. There's a lot of wedding crests that get designed or venue illustrations that I put onto wedding invitations or signage or things. And I just think it's really great that couples want to involve all of their special moments, special places, special people in their lives in their wedding paper. It's a great shift. It's making weddings more fun and unique. And I'm glad. I can't wait to see where it goes from here.
This is as I'm playing with your cat underneath the desk. Who is this that I'm seeing here?
His name is Benson.
Benson.
Yes.
That's awesome. Do you guys just have one cat?
We have two.
Oh my gosh.
The other one is probably hiding from you.
That's funny. Just as a quick note about the personalization, our wedding on Labor Day, so this was just last Saturday, was like so country western, like everybody dressed up. Wow. She had like a denim jacket over her dress for the reception. It was like tweed vest. I mean, I'm talking like to the nines, not just like the mason jars, but like all the guests came. They're like, oh, it's Halloween, they all had like hats. And her whole side of the family was Chinese. So it was it was very personalized, in a way that even as we're talking about kind of this trend, I had never seen that before. Mm-hmm. We're talking costumes, the whole nine. So, but, that was what they wanted to have. And so it's, it's interesting because then it further makes it that every day is kind of different, right?
Yeah.
Talk about your client base, you said you work with people all over. How does that work for a stationary calligraphy designer person? How do you do that?
So the great thing about what I do is it's not like a florist company or a planner or a videographer, in that I don't have to have sit-down face-to-face meetings with my client to provide my service to them. Oftentimes, I don't ever meet my clients. They contact me via Instagram or email or Facebook or through my website, and they just share their vision for their wedding day with me, and I send them a couple ideas for how I plan to interpret that, and then it's usually good to go, and we just create it. I ship it off to them, and it's done. It's a very bizarre experience, actually, to know that you played such an important role in somebody's wedding day, but you never met them.
Yeah, I mentioned that we didn't do a lot for our wedding, but the one thing that we really did care about was the invites, and we had a couple chalkboards and things, because it really is, from the invite on. I know my wife, she's very popular and gets a lot of wedding invitations for her friends, and that's always the first thing that that you are able to comment on. Our friends got married in Italy, and she got the invite, and she was like, wow, this is really nice. And it was. It was more intricate than anything I had ever seen. talk about like maybe some of the different things that you work on or ideas that you, I don't, I guess I'm losing my train of thought here, but like, what different services, I guess, do you offer? Have we talked about that?
Oh, wow. I think I'm kind of unique in the community here in that I pretty much offer everything. The only thing I don't really do is chalkboards. I do wood signage, acrylic, place cards, programs, escort cards, menus, all those day of pieces, but my primary focus is invitations. I cater to a more high-end client who's looking to provide an experience for her guests, not somebody that necessarily wants to just get it out of the way, mail it out, think about other things. This client that I mostly work with is super into paper. They love getting things in the mail, and they love getting their friends invitations, and they love looking at them and saying, wow, this paper is really thick. I love this. This feels fancy. I want to go to this wedding. So I do a lot of foil invitations, letterpress, a lot of unique materials like 100% cotton paper, recycled paper, everything. There are so many options out there that people can choose from now. It's not just, cranes, crane paper, or, what our parents had where you're just engraving. There's just a lot of different options, and I pretty much do it all. I kind of pride myself on that.
As someone whose father was in marketing and advertising, my flyers are always like one notch thicker on the paper, and I do have some of the thickest business cards that you've seen because I do believe in that value and that, the tangibleness. So how did you kind of find your way into this? You said you used to live in Florida. Is that where this started? Where did the journey kind of begin?
So that's actually a interesting journey for me. I went to school at the University of Central Florida for my first degree. I was hospitality management, so I wanted to be a wedding planner. And I graduated in 2008, right when the market crashed. And if you can believe it, there weren't even any jobs in Orlando. And that's the tourist capital of the United States easily. So I had to move back home with my parents, about an hour and a half south of that, cute little beach town. And I hung out there doing work in a wellness center at a gym. And they asked me to start doing some flyers for them. And I thought, oh, well, this is kind of fun. I kind of like this. And I really, really love learning, and I love school. I know it's kind of strange, but I love learning in school. And so I thought, I'm just going to go get another degree. It's not going to do me any good to just have a hospitality degree. And I went back to college. I got my second bachelor degree in a year and a half in graphic design with a minor in web design. And then from there, I just kind of experimented with a bunch of things. I got a job at an agency in my tiny little town, did some invitation design for them, and found my niche really. And of course, designed my own wedding invitations. But it wasn't until that moment that I remembered that I had taken a calligraphy class when I was 7 and found all my pens and started teaching myself calligraphy and thought, I can marry these two together. I never wanted to work in weddings after the whole, wedding planner degree debacle of 2008. But it kind of clicked. It just felt like that was the right direction for me to go in. It wasn't necessarily commercial design. It was weddings. It was making people feel special and happy, not marketing to a huge audience. And I really like having the relationships with my clients, and I wasn't really getting that in my studio job. So yeah, it was kind of an interesting transition, but it felt a little full circle. Like I went to school to be a wedding planner, and I still ended up in weddings anyway. So I don't know. I think it all worked out for the best.
No, I think that's fascinating. As someone that also graduated in '08, I know well aware of all that. What was it about weddings that drew you in the first place back to get that original degree?
I think it was just my love of organization. I'm not like most creatives out there in that I'm very organized. I'm pretty type A. And when we used to go on family vacations, I would write out little itineraries for us and design them and print them. So that felt like a natural fit for me. I didn't want to do any other degrees. I mean, I started out doing micro and molecular biology. So, I mean, that was a huge shift from realizing that I wasn't like a science geek or a math geek. I was more into service and having relationships with people. So I think that's where that ended up coming from.
And so you did a little bit of design for corporate kind of before, and you said you really didn't like that.
I did really like it, but it just didn't feel personal enough for me. My mentor at my job, my studio job before I made the transition to invitation design, just changed my life completely. I would not be the designer that I am today if it were not for him pushing me and teaching me and training me to really value my work and really believe in the relationships that we have with our clients and our customers. So yeah, it was a great experience. I just felt the calling in weddings, I think.
So then how did Sablewood Paper come about? First off, what could you explain the name or where's the background about? I'm always curious.
So I'm also a writer. I write fiction. And I was wondering if you were going to ask that. Most people do. There's this really great community called National Novel Writing Month, and you actually are supposed to write 30,000 words in the month of November. I did that about 4 or 5 years ago, and I wrote 58,000 words, and it was my first novel, and I loved it. And my main character's name was Sable. And so when I was developing an idea for the business, I was mostly doing wood signs. And so I knew that wood or something had to be in my name, and the book wasn't really going anywhere. So I just thought, this name means something to me. I'm going to put these two together, and that's going to be the name, and it flows and it sounds really nice. And if people ask, then I've got a story. I can tell them, these other things about me, that I'm not just a designer, I'm not just a creative, I also write. And, I think that it's good to incorporate all aspects of your personality as much as possible into your work. So
that's fascinating. Do you still write?
I do, yeah.
How is that? What do you enjoy writing the most? Or
I read a lot of young adult fiction. I really enjoy that kind of like coming of age story. It usually has a little bit of not fantasy, but kind of dystopian themes in there. A lot of nods towards politics and the culture of today. Very like 1984 reminiscent.
I don't even know how it works nowadays. Do you publish it, or do you put them on Amazon, or how does that work? Or?
I haven't gotten that far yet. I'm terrified to put it out there. I've had a few friends and family read, and they all are very encouraging, think that I should pursue it. But the whole process of getting published is difficult. I want to go through a real publishing agency, not just do it myself. So it's a lot of work.
But it's a good creative outlet.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's fascinating. So when did you start Sablewood then?
In 2015.
Okay.
Right like the week after I got married. I just said, let's go for it. Let's do this.
So what was why right then? What was the spur moment of that?
Right after we got married, my husband got a job in Seattle. So he moved out to Seattle. I was still in Florida. And I thought, I have too much time on my hands now. I don't have anybody to entertain. I have my full-time gig. My mom and I were running a paint and sip studio where you paint paintings and drink wine. But I needed more creativity, as if that wasn't enough. So I came up with, this, let's sell some of my wood signs, or let's sell some little lettered quotes or something like that. And just became an LLC right off the bat. My family are all entrepreneurs, so that was pretty natural for me to do, and just went from there. It kind of grew overnight, I think.
Was that scary pursuing that, or did you ever have any doubts? Or
I didn't, because I was not afraid to go slow. And that's one of the biggest pieces of advice that I've ever gotten from anybody, or best pieces of advice I've ever gotten from anyone, is just don't be afraid to just grow naturally. You don't have to grow overnight. You don't have to sell a million things to be successful. And I also had the security of my full-time job to pay the bills. So while it was a little scary to put myself and my creativity out there, it wasn't really that scary business-wise. So I think that for the people that are listening that have this passion on the side, you're a side hustler, you have a full-time job, keep doing that. Just grow it organically, and one day it'll feel so right to transition. It'll feel good, and you'll have so much work for your side hustle that it'll just happen naturally.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I know that, it was similar where, I was working and transitioning, and I know that, my wife has a friend and, they really kind of jumped on it and said, I'm going to start this. And it's like, you really do need to get the training wheels and then get them off and then get rolling and then, get a helmet and you can't it isn't just an overnight thing. I think a lot of people think that, or they also undervalue the work or underestimate the amount of work, I think even still now, some of my wife's friends are oh, that's good, but it's they don't know all the work that goes into it. So then you moved out here. So are you just Sablewood now? Do you do any of the paint stuff anymore?
I don't. My mom was diagnosed with cancer, and we knew that we just couldn't continue the business. We were planning to expand out here once I moved out here, but it was a duo thing. It wasn't going to work with just one of us. So we closed the business, and when I transitioned out here, I could not find a job. I was overqualified for everything that I applied for, and I didn't understand because I felt in this market like I'm underqualified for all of these great designers and creatives out there. So Sablewood kind of was an accidental full-time job. My husband told me, just keep looking, but grow your business, go to networking. Get to know the wedding people here in the community because I've heard that they're great. And that's what happened. And it just kind of, after a few months, the jobs never worked out. So it just became this full-time thing. And it's been a little over a year now that I've been going at it full-time, and it's fantastic. It's going really well.
Talk about, I think when I got here, we're talking a little bit about the Seattle wedding community and kind of growing out here. What are your thoughts on that? And talk about that and your experience where you have kind of relocated out here and are kind of growing into that.
So where I'm from in Florida, this tiny little town, we have 3 photographers, 1 wedding planner. We have, I think, maybe 3 wedding venues. So the community is really small, and, you kind of grow up knowing everybody anyway. I know a lot of these people from just other jobs. So when I came out here, it was really overwhelming to not only have just Seattle wedding vendors, but then you've got, Snohomish County, the guild there and all of those things. So I struggle a lot with networking as an introvert. But within the first month that I was here, I had already gone to 3 networking events. I forced myself to say hi to people, even though I was terrified. And everybody just kind of embraced me. This Seattle freeze that I kept hearing about did not happen. And maybe it's just the wedding community, but they were all so sweet and helpful and kind. And it really made me feel like I'd found my people. These are the people that you want to surround yourself with. These are the people that are going to lift you up and make your business better. And I just never thought that it was going to be that way in weddings. It always seems like a very superficial community. Everybody's kind of out to do whatever they can to get ahead, but not here. Everybody's just fantastic. They're just great and sweet.
And so it's been fun.
It has, yeah.
And then obviously continuing to grow now. Do you mostly service Seattle clients, or like you said, you do a lot of online sale? How does that balance work?
About half and half. I do get a lot of work from, local planners or florists. Some clients find me through some wedding shows that I've done, or just my website in general, or Instagram. But I've been building my online presence over the last almost 4 years. So I get a really good majority of my clients through my Etsy shop, or just searching through Google to find me. And again, it is so easy to get clients all over the country to work with you because they don't really need to work face-to-face with a stationer, which is really fantastic. It's great.
Is that, I have to imagine on the other side that that's a very difficult process. I know that I have a guy that I use to do like my business cards and stuff. And like, I'm like the worst about saying what I do want, but then when I see it, I definitely know what I don't want. Is that challenging sometimes? Because it's almost like you're a sketch artist where someone gives you like, right?
Yeah.
I mean, talk about just that process. Like, what is that like?
Yeah. So I actually have, most of my clients don't really know what they want. I do have a couple that, send me pictures from Pinterest and say, I kind of like this feel. Design something, that has a similar feel to that. And that's great. But most of my clients are, they don't know how to explain what they want. They don't know what they want until they see it. So I actually draw on my graphic design background to kind of, make that easier for them. We don't do any designs until we've sketched things out for them. I usually send them 2 or 3 different options. Is this kind of what you're looking for? Or is it something more like this? Because when I read what you're saying, this is what I'm thinking, but I could also see you meaning this. And once we get to that point, we've usually had hours of conversation. We've sent 15 or 20 emails to each other. We usually do a Skype session or something like that, so I can actually hold things up and show them. And that makes it a lot easier for people who aren't design inclined, that maybe look at 1,000 different photos on Pinterest every day and can't weed out what they really want. And I think that a lot of creatives struggle with that, even florists or planners. It's difficult for a client to communicate all of these things that they've been seeing and consolidate it into one vision, one theme for their wedding. They want all the themes.
Yeah, I'm just like in my mind flashing back to like nightmares with my wife, like looking at, God bless Molly doing our invites and like, oh, we like don't like, I'm like, well, she probably spent like a day doing that. And like, you really should look at it for more than 3 seconds to be like, oh, I hate that. So in the questionnaire I had sent, to come on the podcast, you had mentioned a lot about, different clients' expectations and things in terms of like invitations and, when to do things or how things work and in the process. So, on that note, what do you think about like kind of what expectations clients have now for like when things need to be done or when they should work on things?
So I think that this question, if you ask any wedding professional, they're just going to say, book me as soon as possible. And I think that that's true. You should book them as soon as you know that you want to use them. But it's a little different for stationery because there is a longer time frame that's needed in advance. If you're booking a makeup artist, they basically just need to work with their schedule to make sure that they're free that day. With stationery and calligraphy, doing 100 envelopes takes me at least a week. So if you're contacting me, I just had somebody contact me a couple days ago and say, hey, I have a calligraphy emergency. My client's getting married this weekend. She needs 300 place cards, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't help you. I need more time than that. I know that this is probably like a last minute thing for you, but this isn't something that calligraphers or stationers can just kind of pull out of nowhere. So timelines are really important in my line of work. We usually like to send out save the dates. I like to send them out at least 10 months in advance. So that means we need a couple months to work on those. So, a year out from your wedding, we're already talking about paper. I usually work with my clients on their invitations about 7 to 8 months out, because depending on what they want, the timeline could take longer than you think it would. Letterpress and foil are specialty printing styles. They usually take about 3 or 4 weeks, especially during wedding season when all the printers are getting just bombarded with all of these invitations that they're creating for people. So, knowing what you want is important going into a meeting, but also knowing when to contact your calligrapher or stationer. Calligraphy is a totally separate thing that usually requires, a couple weeks of work at least. So, in advance, as early as possible. I'm already working on weddings for next summer. So that's at least a couple months out of my year that I can't take on any more work. And, those are some on the ball brides, but that's what we like.
And then too, I think it's also like people don't necessarily know like all the different things, right, that they need, where you need like the invite and the envelope and the save the date and like the return or the RSVP card, and then like, menus and table. I mean, talk about kind of just even just for like, we're even talking just like a normal wedding, right? That's not over the top.
Yeah.
And we talk about the kind of the different things that people.
So there's a lot of moving parts with invitations. You obviously want an invitation to tell people, what to wear, where to go, when to be there, who's getting married. But it's also really important to have, a reply card with an envelope with prepaid postage. You don't want your guests to pay for postage or you're never going to get your RSVPs back. But a lot of couples have either consolidated or shied away from traditional details cards. Instead of back in the day where, your parents were engraving their invitations and they were doing detail cards with registry information and things like that. Now people are kind of saying, just include a card with our wedding website. And that's cutting down on the amount of pieces that go into your invitation suite, which is great because it saves on postage, but also because you're not overwhelming your guests with a bunch of different pieces. But instead of having all those pieces too, or a separate details card, people are kind of shifting towards that personalization and doing custom map cards to show guests what special locations are around them. I just did a map for a client that she really wanted Mount Rainier in there. She really wanted the University of Washington in there. And then she also wanted downtown Seattle. Like, here's the pier where you can get on the Ferris wheel and you can, have some fun touristy time. And her guests really loved that because, they're not from here. All of them are from out of town. So that, I would say, is a typical invitation suite. For most couples, place cards and menus are pretty standard for day of pieces. If you're having like a Catholic mass or a very lengthy religious ceremony of some kind, maybe you're having a Jewish ceremony and most of your guests are not Jewish, then having a program is really helpful because they might not know what's going on. Maybe you can give them background on what these customs mean. And signage is also pretty much a staple in weddings now. If you don't have like a signature drink sign or like a welcome sign, it's probably a pretty low key wedding.
Where are we? Yeah. I do laugh when we'll get the save the dates or whatever, the return card, and they'll put the website on the thing that the people mail back. And then, right? And I feel like we were going to do that and our person talked us out, but like we've definitely like gotten that a lot. And it's like, wait, what was your website again? A question I do have is I see a lot of people now posting about, digital only, sending out whatever. And like, I kind of think that's a terrible idea because I know that like even at my age, like we had elderly people or not everybody was like on to like RSVP online and stuff. Do you see that happening where people are getting away from the traditional mailing? And what are your thoughts on that?
My clients don't do stuff like that. My clients typically want that paper experience. I have heard that there are some brides that want to go the digital route, but I think that's bad for two reasons. And one is, your elderly guests, your grandparents, your great aunts and uncles, they still might not be checking their email or getting emails. But another big reason is in today's digital world, we're all inundated with email after email. And I don't know about you, but my inbox is just overwhelmed, like flowing with junk. And I don't even look at it, and you don't want your special wedding invitation getting lost in that clutter. Or let's say they open it because they do see it's your wedding invitation, but then they don't do anything about it. They don't RSVP. They forget it's lost now. Maybe they accidentally move it to their junk folder or trash it. How are they going to know to let you know, if they're coming to your wedding or not? They could miss the RSVP deadline, and then you're frantically calling them trying to figure out if they're coming or not. And, I know that it works well for budget couples. That doesn't mean that it's a bad thing at all. I think that it works better for save the dates. because you're sending, a follow-up after that saying like, hey, this is official now. We're actually getting married. Here's your invitation. And it's something they can tack on their fridge or, keep on their desk and remind them daily, I have to do this. I have to respond to this person. But yeah, I have actually had a couple of clients that just refused to not let me put the wedding website on their RSVP cards. I'm like, I just don't think it's a good idea. Can we put it somewhere else too?
Yes, anywhere else.
Yeah.
Even just, I think I think we put ours. Well, no, because our designer didn't want to put it on the actual invite because her rationale was, the timelessness of it, that it would, and so we put it on the back. So then, you could still I don't know if Dorothy would probably frame our invite.
Yeah.
I would not, but then it was on the back. So people had it still. In terms of clients you work with or, the clients that you see, I always like to ask the biggest misconceptions people have or pitfalls that you see time and time again that people can learn from. What in your field and your expertise, where do you see for that?
Price. 100%. There are so many wedding blogs and magazines out there that tell you that your invitations are only going to cost you $300. That's not true. Your postage is probably going to cost you $300. Even if you go with one of those big box online invitation retailers, you're still, for 100 people, you're still looking at least $600 or $700. And that's without any customization. That's even without any address printing. You're not even writing your guests' names down in your envelope. So one of my biggest, I guess, issues with the wedding community, just in general around the world, is that stationery isn't well represented in people's budgets. They're reading magazines like The Knot that tells them, only 1% of your budget should be spent on your paper goods. And I know that every wedding professional thinks that, their area of expertise is most important, and should obviously have the most money spent on it. But I think it's unrealistic to expect to go to a stationer or a calligrapher and say, my budget's $300 to $500 and I'm inviting 200 people to my wedding. So, what can you do? I mean, that basically doesn't even cover my design fee. So price is huge. It's a huge misconception in the industry. And I've made it kind of my personal mission to educate as many people as possible about that. I have a huge blog post, a 4-part blog series that I wrote all about it, and it's a passion project of mine.
And you think that comes from places like The Knot not educating properly?
I do, yeah. I think that, they've probably, when they send out their interviews or their questionnaires for couples who have just gotten married, I think that the people who fill them out are probably the ones that printed them themselves or went to Kinko's or something. And, they're not factoring in all the costs. They're not saying, well, we bought envelopes, we bought postage, we bought paper, all of that stuff. They're just saying this is what printing costs. And yeah, I think that that's kind of a problem.
We were the couple that had, we had 115 people and we ordered 200 invites because we didn't realize that that we needed it. We're like, everyone needs it. That would be my biggest lesson from ours. What other kind of issues do you see constantly coming up when you work with clients?
The timeline thing is a really big deal. Lots of clients come to me and say, I want foil and I want handmade paper, and I need it in 2 weeks. That's not really doable. We can't really work around that kind of schedule, even with rush times. Another, I guess, misconception about stationery is that stationery is created equal. It's not. There are different levels of paper that you can buy that increase the value of it, the way that your guests will feel when they touch it, when they look at it. And you need to talk to your stationery or calligrapher about that. You need to go over the options with them. What they offer as a stock option may not be what you want for your invites. And another big thing is to make sure that who you're working with knows what they're doing. I'm all for supporting people that have just started out in the industry. But, just ask a bunch of questions, probe, make sure that they know, that you know what's going to happen if something goes wrong with your order. If a piece goes missing, while the printer is assembling everything, you need to have like a contract in place, and you need to be able to get somebody on the phone, should you need it. And I think that, working with somebody who has a lot of experience, that's the only way that you're going to get that.
So in terms of like, I'm looking kind of here, some of the, woods and other things, like, do you design that and contract that out, or how does that work, kind of assembling the more grandiose piece, or like the foil and all those things?
So all of my signage I do in-house. I am a big woodworker. My dad builds countertops and cabinets. So he gave me a hammer when I was like 3 years old. So I'm no stranger to like working in a shop. And I do all of the wood signs and the acrylic signs and mirrors myself. But when it comes to foil, I have to send that out. I don't have a foil press. But all of the design work is done in-house. And I actually have a letterpress now. So I will be able to do in-house letterpress for my clients, which is a service that I am just so excited to provide, because it does take so long to do it. But if I have control over it, then it's much easier, and it satisfies my OCD a little bit.
Do you enjoy the hand working more with the woods and things, or the design process? Where does your kind of...
That's a tough question. Some days I hate wood. I just can't. I just want to sit in front of a computer. Other days I don't want to be out in the sun sanding for hours and staining and painting, because it is pretty labor intensive. But both of them are kind of freeing, in different ways. The design on a computer, you get to really like let loose and make mistakes and have fun. But when you're working with wood, you have to be pretty precise. If you cut something the wrong way, then you can't just like Control or Command Z and like undo it. It's permanent. And so it really just depends on my frame of mind, I guess, and what I'm working on currently.
And do you do that stuff here, or do you have a shop that you work at? My
husband and I have a 2-car garage that we've kind of transformed into a workshop.
Is he handy at all too, or no?
Very handy.
Okay.
Yeah. He, I was like I was saying earlier, he has done all of the remodeling in our house. He did all of the baseboards and the window frames and all of that. He's extremely handy. Very, very thankful to have him.
That's funny. In terms of kind of, goals moving forward now, so now that you're establishing here in Seattle, where do you kind of see this going, in the next 2-3 years?
Yeah. I would like to have my own space. I'd love to have a retail space. That's goals. A place that I can set up my letterpress and it's not just in my office taking up a bunch of space. I would also love to provide some sort of educational resources for people, do webinars, do, other podcasts where I'm teaching people how to be the best at being a stationer. Really, I want to stay a one-woman shop, but I don't mind adding on some extra pair of hands to help with invitation assembly, which is a very tedious task. Brides, if you're listening and you want to assemble your own invitations, it's going to take you hours. Just let us do it. And basically just growing slowly, just taking it one day at a time, growing into the retail space, growing into my products, offering more products that people can buy that isn't necessarily custom. And I do have a semi-custom invitation suite line that I'm launching. So it'll be a little more affordable than custom invitations, but brides will still be able to, change pieces about it, update a monogram or change the printing style from foil to just digital printing or something like that. So just more options, really.
So that's something you've been working on for your own.
Mm-hmm.
How does that work then? Or what was the thought process behind that?
So what I primarily do right now is custom invitations. That's from scratch. It's like baking a cake from scratch. We start with the paper. We pick envelope colors. We say, do you want a monogram? Do you want a venue illustration? Do you just want calligraphy? What kind of pieces do you want in your invitation? But with A semi-custom line, you're actually given sort of a template with a couple pieces that are movable. So if this template has a venue illustration, for example, like you're getting married at the Space Needle, and you want that drawn on your invitation, that would be a piece that could be removable, put into your invitation, and then it's like it was made for you. But because a lot of pieces in that invitation are unmovable, they're just staying put, the cost goes down a lot because there's not a lot of design that goes into it, unlike custom invitations. So trying to hit a little bit of a different price point bride with that, rather than someone who's looking to spend, 20% of their wedding budget, somebody that only wants to spend 10, and you really catering my invitations towards them.
Something I'm always curious about, someone like you that, provides these things for the day of, obviously people that are going to you for high-end invitations are probably going to hire like high-end photographers and things to capture all that. Do you ever have issue in terms of marketing and getting, like stuff for online and things for your website and social media and stuff? What are your thoughts? I'm just always curious where like I generate my own content, right? And like you generate this thing that then you are relying on other people, unless you're setting up maybe you are setting up details here to shoot that.
I do actually shoot a lot of my own stationery here. I've been training myself for many years to do that. But there's nothing better than getting photos back from an actual wedding. A lot of my clients don't send those to me, though. It's like Christmas morning when I get a gallery. So I rely a lot on editorials. Last year, I think I did 20 styled shoots, which is insane. I don't know how I did all that. I was exhausted, I guess. But you make sure to work with some other creatives who have the same goals in mind as you. And that's how a lot of my content has been generated. Because like I said, I don't get that day of experience with my bride. So I can't just go to their wedding and say, oh, I'd like to photograph my sign that I made for you. So it's really important to do those editorial shoots and to put together my own in my house with, just going to pick up some flowers from the market and setting up a little corner that I can do a flat lay of my invitation suite. And, that's just been invaluable to have. And another way that I've gotten to know a lot of people in the wedding community is just through editorial shoots and building those relationships that way.
So when you're not in your shop, woodworking or in front of your computer writing, what do you do for free time? Or what do you do with your husband? What are your other interests? What are your
veg out? We do a lot of home improvement projects because we are renovating the house right now. But we also really enjoy like thrift shopping. We do a lot of that. We also just drive around a lot to see new things. We drive to Mount Rainier, check that out. It's just gorgeous down there. And then we're pretty new to this, the North Seattle area. So we kind of drive around and check out cute shops and other like nature areas. I'm not really big into hiking. I think that he would probably go hiking if he could get me to. But just kind of checking out the beauty of the area. I write a lot. I watch, more TV than I should probably. But if I'm not creating in my office, I'm probably creating on my iPad somewhere. I'm always doing something to push my boundaries and further myself in some way.
Where do you take a lot of that inspiration from nature and going out, or where do you get new ideas to incorporate into your designs?
Travel. I spent a summer abroad in Italy, and that just totally inspired me to create my semi-custom line. It's based on a very like Tuscan theme. And just traveling to anywhere really. We go to Mexico every year for our anniversary. We just went up to Vancouver for a concert, and we'd never been up there before. So just seeing new things is really what inspires me most. It has to be new. I'm a Gemini, so I kind of thrive on all of that new experiences and things. So the newer the better. Anything, new foods, new travel, new places to go, new books, new TV shows. new people, really anything to just broaden horizons.
Do you find with wedding trends and things in terms of designing and staying on trend, do you find difficulties in that, or are you kind of able to grow with that? Or
it's sometimes difficult. It's only because a lot of the trends might not be like my taste. So it's more difficult to design for clients if it's challenging to, like, taste-wise. I've seen a big shift in the amount of calligraphy that people are using in their weddings. A lot of people have gone like a more traditional route rather than this modern calligraphy, like very fun lettering style that has been so popular for the last few years. And even more so, a lot of trend or a lot of shift in the wedding industry is to do spot calligraphy, which is basically just like on an invitation, it would just be your names in calligraphy and the rest would just be in a computer font. Minimalist style. So it's an interesting shift, and I'm really enjoying it because even with all the personalization that's being incorporated into weddings, there's still this element of like toning it down a little bit in stationery itself.
I was going to ask you, and I forgot earlier, about how you said you designed did the calligraphy for your own wedding, and I wanted to hear how that went.
That was fun. I didn't do any place cards or anything like that, but I did address my own envelopes and I did my own wood signs. And I can't even, why did I do it the way that I did? It's terrible. I look back on the pictures that I took from that day and I'm like, wow, I've come so far. I was up until 1 o'clock in the morning, like 3 nights before the wedding, tracing these letters onto wood and then hand painting them with the brush, like painstakingly. And things have just changed so much. We have pens now that can do that. We don't have to use a brush and it doesn't have to take hours to do something. The calligraphy for my envelopes, I remember printing in like 10% grayscale on the envelope itself, the calligraphy style that I wanted, and then tracing over that. Just embarrassing. I wish I still had some of those.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, because I always wonder, like, and even with the trends thing, like things like for maybe our parents' wedding years ago and aging, mm-hmm. right? Do you think the designs of today are going to age, or do you think that it's going to be our kids are going to look back in 30 years and be like, wow, this is really scary?
Well, that's an interesting question because I found my parents' invitation from their wedding and I've seen people design similar styles today. So I think that it's like fashion. It's very cyclical. I actually designed an invitation myself just like that before I saw theirs. So it's really strange. It's popular again, what my parents did for their weddings. But yeah, to answer your question, even invitations that were created 2 years ago, we're all looking back on it now and saying like, whoa, that was really bad. We should update that a little bit. So I think that some things will go out of style, but I don't think the personalization ever will because it's you. It was your wedding. Your invitations mirrored you perfectly. How is that ever going out of style? How is that ever going to be something that you look back on and say, ooh, that's cringeworthy? It's you.
Well, perfect. Thank you so much for allowing me to come in today and kind of see your office and learn, meet you and learn about your process. If people want to learn more about you, your company, how to get in contact and work with you, what would you have them do?
You can visit my website. It's sablewoodpaper.com. I'm also huge on Instagram. My tag is a Sablewood Paper Co. And you can always email me, sablewoodpaper@gmail.com.
Perfect. This has been another episode of Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. Check back next week for another wedding vendor interview. Thank you so much.
Thank you.